The emergency signal arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. Commander Dae-hyun sat in his office on Lunar Station Harmony, drinking his third cup of coffee and reviewing supply reports. The work was boring but necessary. He had been doing this job for 30 years, ever since humanity joined the Galactic Council. The alarm changed everything. Red lights flashed across every screen in the station. Lieutenant Hee-jin burst through his door without knocking. Her face was pale. "Sir, we have a distress call. It's the Velkrin. They're under attack." Dae-hyun stood up quickly. The Velkrin were peaceful traders. They had never hurt anyone. He followed Hee-jin to the command center. The large screens showed images from the Velkrin colony on Velkros 4. What he saw made his stomach turn. The colony was burning. Bodies lay in the streets. The Velkrin looked like tall, thin people made of crystal. Now many of them were broken, shattered like glass. Buildings collapsed as strange ships fired from above. Children screamed for their parents. Parents screamed for help. The attackers called themselves the Kravor. They were a nomadic species that traveled through space, taking what they wanted. They enslaved other species and stripped planets of resources. Then they moved on to the next target. The Council knew about them but considered them a minor threat. They usually attacked empty colonies on the edge of space, far from anyone important. But Velkros 4 was not empty. 300,000. Velkrin lived there. Families, workers, teachers, children. All of them were dying while Dae-hyun watched. "Connect me to the Council," he ordered. The Council meeting had already started. Representatives from 47 different species filled the virtual chamber. Everyone was talking at once. The Velkrin ambassador was begging for help. His voice shook as he showed the same terrible images that Dae-hyun was watching. The other species offered sympathy. They offered prayers. They offered to send medical supplies after the attack ended. But nobody offered to send military help. Nobody wanted to fight. One representative explained that Council rules did not allow military action against non-member species. Another said that the Kravor had not attacked Council space directly, so this was not their problem. A third suggested forming a committee to study the situation and recommend action in 6 months. 6 months. The Velkrin would all be dead or enslaved in 6 days. Dae-hyun had learned many things during his 30 years with the Council. He learned that most species in the galaxy came from safe worlds. Their planets had weak gravity, calm weather, and few predators. They evolved in gardens. They built civilizations based on cooperation and trade. War was something they read about in history books. Earth was different. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world. Humans evolved alongside creatures that could kill them in seconds. They survived ice ages, plagues, and natural disasters that would destroy other species. They learned to fight or die. That knowledge was burned into their DNA. The Council debated for 3 hours. The Velkrin signal grew weaker. Fewer voices called for help. More screams of pain. The images showed the Kravor landing more troops, setting up processing centers where they would sort the survivors into slaves and food. Hee-jin stood next to Dae-hyun, watching the same screens. She was young, only 28 years old. She was born on Mars and had never seen Earth. But she carried the same fire in her blood that all humans did. Finally, she spoke. "Sir, our fleet is ready. We can reach Velkros 4 in 12 hours if we push the engines hard." Dae-hyun looked at the tactical display. 5 destroyers, 2 carriers, and 12 support ships. 17 ships total. The Kravor had over 3,000 ships around Velkros 4. On paper, it was suicide. But paper did not account for human determination. He thought about the rules. Humanity had worked so hard to follow Council protocols. They wanted to be good members of the galactic community. They wanted to prove they were civilized. Not the violent barbarians that many species feared, but rules meant nothing if good people died while everyone followed them. "Activate Protocol Omega," he said quietly. Hee-jin smiled. Protocol Omega was a human-only emergency procedure. It meant direct military intervention without Council approval. It was created specifically for situations like this, when the Council talked while innocents died. Alarms rang throughout the station. Marines ran to their assault ships. Pilots sprinted to their fighters. Engineers checked weapon systems one last time. Within 10 minutes, the entire human rapid response fleet was moving toward the launch bays. The Council erupted in chaos. Ambassador So-yeon, the human representative, suddenly found herself surrounded by angry aliens. They demanded explanations. They cited rules and regulations. They threatened consequences. So Yan had been a diplomat for 20 years. She had spent those years building relationships, making compromises, and proving that humans could be trusted. Now she watched all that work crumble, but she also watched the Velcrin ambassador's face. She saw hope appear in his crystalline features for the first time in hours. "My government has made its decision," she said calmly. "We will not stand by while genocide happens. You may debate the legality later. Right now, people are dying." The human fleet launched. 17 ships accelerated away from Luna, their engines burning bright enough to see from Earth. They engaged their faster-than-light drives and disappeared from Council space. On Velcros 4, Governor Myung-hee received a message. It was short and simple. "Hold on. Terra is coming." She broadcast it to every surviving Velcrin. They did not know what Terra meant. They did not know anything about human military capability, but they heard the certainty in that message. Someone was coming to help. Someone was willing to fight for them. The galaxy watched with a mixture of horror and curiosity. For 73 years, humanity had been careful. They followed rules. They avoided conflicts. They presented themselves as peaceful explorers, learning from older, wiser species. Now, for the first time, the galaxy would see what humans were really capable of. They would learn why Earth was called a death world. They would understand what it meant to be a species that evolved by fighting for survival every single day. The Cravor did not know this yet. They continued their attack, confident that no one would stop them. They had done this hundreds of times before. The Council species always talked and did nothing. They thought humans would be the same. They were wrong. In his command chair, Daehyun watched the clock count down. 12 hours until they arrived at Velcros 4. 12 hours until the Cravor learned a hard lesson. 12 hours until humanity showed the galaxy who they really were. He did not feel excited. He felt tired and sad. War was never something to celebrate. But sometimes it was necessary. Sometimes the only way to stop a predator was to be a bigger, meaner predator. The human fleet raced through space toward the dying colony. Behind them, the Council debated. Ahead of them, the Cravor killed. And in the middle, 300,000 Velcrin prayed that help would arrive in time. The signal that doomed a species had been sent. The Deathworlders were responding. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Velcro system. Immediately, every sensor on every ship went active. The crew needed to know what they were facing. What they found was worse than the images suggested. Velcros 4 was surrounded by Craver ships. Captain Mincio counted them from his destroyer, the Indomitable. 3,047 enemy vessels. They ranged from small fighters to massive harvester ships that were 2 kilometers long. The Cravor ships were strange. They were not built like human vessels. They were grown like biological organisms. Their hulls looked like insect shells. They moved in swarms, communicating with each other through some kind of chemical signals that human sensors could barely detect. On the planet below, 17 settlements had gone dark. The Cravor were landing troops in the remaining cities. They were herding the Velcrin into pens like animals. Some would become slaves. Others would become food. The Cravor did not waste anything. Commander Daehyun stood on the bridge of his flagship. He had commanded ships for 3 decades, but he had never seen anything like this. The Cravor outnumbered his fleet 175 to 1. Any rational military commander would retreat and call for reinforcements. But there was no time for reinforcements. The Velcrin were dying right now. Every minute he waited meant more deaths. "Open a channel on all frequencies," he ordered. "Translate into every language we know, including Cravor." The communications officer nodded. A moment later, Daehyun's voice broadcast across the entire star system. "This is Commander Daehyun of the Terran Defense Fleet. You are committing genocide against a peaceful species. Withdraw immediately or face military intervention. You have 1 hour to comply. This is your only warning." The response came quickly. The Cravor command ship sent a message in their guttural language. The translation appeared on Daehyun's screen. It was full of insults and threats. The Cravor thought the humans were bluffing. They looked at the numbers. 17 human ships against 3,000 Cravor vessels. The math seemed simple. The Cravor had encountered Council species before. Those species always talked about peace and diplomacy. They never actually fought. The Cravor assumed humans were the same. Just another soft species that talked big but ran away when things got serious. 58 minutes later, Daehyun gave the order. The human fleet attacked. The first salvo destroyed 43 Cravor ships in seconds. Human railguns fired metal slugs at incredible speeds. Each slug hit with the force of a small nuclear bomb. The biological armor of the Cravor ships shattered like eggshells. The Cravor tried to respond, but their weapons were designed for terrifying other species, not for serious combat. Their plasma weapons were slow and inaccurate. Their biomissiles could be shot down easily. Against the soft council species, these weapons worked fine. Against humans, they were nearly useless. Lieutenant Jiwoo led her fighter squadron into the enemy formation. She was born on Europa Station, one of Jupiter's moons. She had trained her entire life in zero gravity and high radiation. Her reflexes were faster than any council pilot. Her tolerance for acceleration forces would kill most aliens. She pulled maneuvers that looked impossible. Her fighter spun and twisted through enemy fire. Her weapons never stopped firing. In the first 10 minutes of combat, her squadron destroyed 47 Cravor ships. They lost only 2 fighters. The human destroyers moved through the Cravor fleet like sharks through a school of fish. They used tactics that the Cravor had never seen before. They coordinated their attacks perfectly. They covered each other's weaknesses. They adapted to enemy movements in real time. Captain Min Seok watched his tactical display with satisfaction. The Cravor were confused. They were used to overwhelming weaker opponents with numbers. They had never fought an enemy that refused to die easily. They had never fought predators from a death world. While the fleet battled in space, Marine Captain Bo-Ra led her troops to the surface. She had 30 dropships full of Marines. Their mission was to rescue Velcrin survivors and eliminate Cravor ground forces. The dropships screamed through the atmosphere. Anti-aircraft fire exploded around them, but the ships were built to survive this kind of punishment. They landed in the middle of a Cravor-controlled city. The loading ramps dropped. Marines in powered armor charged out. The Cravor ground troops were not prepared for what happened next. Human Marines moved fast despite wearing armor that weighed 300 kilograms. They could carry weapons that would break the arms of most species. They fought with a ferocity that shocked the Cravor. Bo-Ra herself led from the front. She had been born on Earth in the mountains of Korea. She grew up hiking in thin air and harsh weather. The conditions on Velcros 4 were comfortable for her. The planet's gravity was actually lighter than Earth's. She moved like she was dancing. The Marines used tactics learned from centuries of human warfare. They cleared buildings room by room. They set up defensive positions in seconds. They rescued civilians while simultaneously fighting the enemy. This kind of complex operation was beyond what most council species could manage. Sergeant Young-ho found a group of 73 Velcrin trapped in a collapsing building. Cravor soldiers were closing in. Young-ho was a veteran of the Mars Rebellion. He had fought in urban combat before. He knew what to do. He set up his squad in defensive positions around the building. Then he went inside alone to evacuate the civilians. The building was on fire. Parts of the ceiling were falling. The Velcrin were too weak to move quickly. Young-ho carried them out one by one, then 2 at a time, then 3 at a time. Cravor soldiers shot at him the entire time. His armor took 17 direct hits. Each hit would have killed an unarmored human. The armor held. Young-ho kept moving. He got all 73 Velcrin to safety. Then he returned to his squad and continued fighting. The Cravor had never seen anything like this. The council species they had fought before were fragile. They died easily. They panicked under fire. But these humans would not stop. They would not surrender. They would not run away. In space, the battle was turning into a massacre. The Cravor were losing ships faster than they could count. Human weapons were simply more effective. Human crews were better trained. Human ships could take more damage and keep fighting, but numbers still mattered. The Cravor had thousands of ships. The humans had 17. Slowly, the human vessels began taking damage. The destroyer Indomitable lost its forward railgun. The carrier Resolute had a fire in the hangar bay. 2 support ships were destroyed. Daehyun watched the battle reports. His fleet was winning, but they were paying a price. 73 humans were dead. 218 were wounded. If the fight continued much longer, they might lose, but then something changed. The Cravor fleet began to break apart. Their coordination failed. Ships started fleeing in different directions. The Cravor command structure was collapsing. The Cravor had never experienced this before. They had never been hurt this badly. They had never felt real fear. For the first time in their history as a species, they were the prey instead of the predators. After 17 hours of continuous combat, the Kravor fleet retreated. They left behind over 1,200 destroyed ships. They left behind thousands of dead soldiers on the ground. They ran away as fast as their biological engines could carry them. The human fleet did not pursue. Their mission was to save the Velkrin, not to chase the Kravor across the galaxy. They took up defensive positions around the planet and began rescue operations. On the surface, the Marines secured the cities. Medical teams set up field hospitals. Engineers began repairing critical infrastructure. The Velkrin survivors watched in amazement. These humans had traveled across space to save strangers. They had fought against impossible odds. They had won. Elder Crystallis, the leader of the Velkrin survivors, met with Captain Bora. He tried to thank her, but words seemed inadequate. Bora just shook her head. "You don't need to thank us," she said. "We did what anyone should do. We saw people in trouble and we helped." But both of them knew the truth. The Council had not helped. They had watched and done nothing. Only humanity had acted. The galaxy had been watching too. Every species in the Council saw what happened at Velkros 4. They saw human military power for the first time. They saw human determination and courage, and they were terrified. 3 days after the battle, the Galactic Council met in emergency session. The Grand Chamber on the Council homeworld was built to inspire peace and cooperation. Its walls were made of crystal that showed images from all 47 member species. Today, those walls reflected anger and fear. Ambassador So-Yeon stood in the center of the chamber. She had represented humanity for 20 years. She had built friendships with dozens of species. She had worked hard to show that humans were peaceful and trustworthy. Now all of that was gone. Around her, representatives from every council species shouted accusations. Their voices mixed together in a chaos of alien languages. The translation system struggled to keep up. But So-Yeon understood the message clearly. The council was angry. The Tarlexian representative spoke first. The Tarlexians looked like insects made of crystal. They were a peaceful species that hated violence. Their representative's voice was sharp with accusation. "We welcomed humans to the council as children learning to walk among the stars. We believed you wanted peace. Now we see the truth. You have been hiding weapons powerful enough to destroy civilizations. You have been lying to us for 70 years. What else are you hiding?" Other species joined in. The Corvians were peaceful herbivores who had never fought a war. Their representative trembled as she spoke. Her species had watched videos from Velkros 4. They saw human Marines killing Kravor soldiers without hesitation. They saw human weapons destroying ships. They saw a level of violence that gave them nightmares. "Your soldiers fight like monsters," she said. "They show no mercy. They move through environments that would kill our troops. This is not how civilized beings behave. We thought you were like us. We were wrong." Species after species voiced similar concerns. The message was clear. The council thought humans were dangerous. They thought humans were unpredictable. Some representatives even suggested that humanity was a bigger threat than the Kravor. Proposals began to pile up. Economic sanctions against Earth, travel restrictions on human ships, limits on human colonies. The most extreme suggestion came from the Netharian delegate. He proposed putting Earth under quarantine, lock humanity on their own planet before they became a threat to the entire galaxy. So-Yeon listened to all of it. She felt her career crumbling around her. 20 years of work destroyed in 3 days. But she also felt something else. Anger. Not at the council's fear, but at their hypocrisy. When the chamber finally fell silent, she activated her holographic display. Images appeared in the air above her. The council had seen these images before, but So-Yeon made them watch again. Velkrin children crying for their dead parents. Survivors huddled in burning buildings. The Kravor herding people into pens like animals. So-Yeon let the images play for a full minute before she spoke. "Every one of you saw this," she said quietly. "You all watched the Velkrin die while this council debated procedure. You talked about rules and regulations while children burned. Humanity did not hide our capabilities because we wanted to deceive you. We hid them because we knew exactly how you would react." She paused and looked around the chamber. Some representatives would not meet her eyes. "You call us violent. You call us dangerous. Maybe you're right. Earth is a death world. We evolved alongside predators that could kill us instantly. We developed weapons not because we wanted to conquer, but because we needed to survive. We learned warfare because our world gave us no choice. Her voice grew stronger. The chamber was completely silent now. Everyone was listening. But we also learned something else. We learned that strength means nothing without the will to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The Velcrin are alive because humanity chose to act when you chose to debate. If that makes us monsters in your eyes, then we accept that judgment. But I suggest you ask the 17,000 Velcrin survivors if they think we are monsters. The chamber remained silent. So-Yeon's words hung in the air like a physical presence. Many representatives looked uncomfortable. They knew she was right, but admitting it meant accepting their own failure. Then Elder Crystallis of the Velcrin Consortium asked permission to speak. He was the leader of the survivors. His species representative had been silent until now, recovering from the trauma of the attack. Now he moved to the speaker's platform. Crystallis projected his own images. These showed human Marines carrying Velcrin children through fire, human medics working for days without sleep to save the wounded, human engineers rebuilding destroyed power stations while Cravor soldiers still fought nearby. My people were dying, Crystallis said. His voice had a musical quality that made his words even more powerful. The Council offered sympathy. The Council offered prayers. Humanity offered action. They came to save us. They did not ask for payment. They did not demand anything in return. They simply saw suffering and chose to end it. He turned to look at the other representatives. His crystalline face showed no anger, only sadness. You fear their violence. I fear your indifference. Yes, the humans are warriors, but they are warriors who fight for others, not for themselves. They traveled across space to save strangers. They risked their lives for people they had never met. If that is what you call monstrous behavior, then I pray more species become monsters like them. The chamber erupted again, but the tone was different now. Some representatives still argued for sanctions, but others were reconsidering. The Velcrin testimony had introduced doubt. Maybe humanity was not the threat they feared. The debate continued for 3 more days. It was the longest deliberation in council history. Representatives argued about law, morality, and practical politics. They discussed precedent and procedure. They tried to find a solution that would satisfy everyone. Finally, the vote came. The question was simple. Should the council impose sanctions on humanity for unauthorized military action? 23 species voted yes. 17 voted no. 7 abstained. The measure needed 60% to pass. It failed. So-Yeon felt relief, but it was a hollow victory. Humanity had avoided punishment, but everything had changed. The other species no longer saw humans as harmless newcomers. They now classified humanity as a potential threat. Dangerous but unpredictable, powerful but not fully understood. Trade relationships cooled overnight. Cultural exchanges were canceled. Human diplomats found doors closed that had been open before. Human colonies faced increased inspections and restrictions. The galaxy had not punished humanity officially, but they punished them anyway. So-Yeon returned to Earth. Her diplomatic career was over. She had saved humanity from official sanctions, but she had lost everything else. The bridges she spent 20 years building were burned. The trust she had carefully developed was gone. She met with President Han in Geneva. The president thanked her for her service. So-Yeon just nodded. She was too tired to feel much of anything. Was it worth it? The president asked. So-Yeon thought about the question. She thought about the Velcrin children who were alive because of human intervention. She thought about the council's cowardice. She thought about the future. Yes, she said finally. It was worth it. The galaxy now knows who we really are. They know we keep our word. They know we protect the innocent. If that makes them fear us, so be it. Fear is better than contempt, but the story was not over. Far from Velcros 4 in the darkness between stars, the Cravor swarm was regrouping. They were analyzing their defeat. They were adapting their tactics. They were planning revenge. The Cravor had learned a lesson at Velcros 4. They learned that humans were dangerous. But they had also learned something else. Humans could be hurt. Humans could die. And most importantly, humans had colonies that could be attacked. The war was just beginning. 3 weeks had passed since what everyone now called the Trading Post 7 incident. The station had returned to normal operations, but everything had changed. Daeho sat at his usual table in the negotiation hall, reviewing a contract for grain shipments. Across from him sat a Peltharian merchant named Pelthar. The alien was nervous, his hands shaking slightly as he presented the contract terms. These terms look good, Deho said, reading through the document. The delivery schedule is reasonable and the pricing is fair. Pelthar jumped slightly at the word fair. He quickly pulled out another datapad. Actually, honored human, I have revised terms here. Better prices for you. Faster delivery. More favorable payment schedule. Deho looked up confused. Why, the original terms were already good. I want to make sure everything is perfect. No problems. No delays, no annoyance. Deho set down his datapad and spoke gently. Trademaster Pelthar, you seem very stressed. Is something wrong? The Peltharian's translator couldn't quite capture the fear in his voice. Honored human, I simply wish to conduct good business. I heard what happened with the Korthaxians. I don't want any misunderstandings. The Korthaxians stole from us, Deho explained patiently. They were given many chances to return what they took, and they refused. They even tried to attack us. That's very different from normal business negotiations. But what if I make a mistake? What if there's a delay in shipping? What if Then we'll talk about it. Deho interrupted softly. Like adults. Like business partners. Mistakes happen. Ships break down. Weather affects crops. These things don't annoy us. What annoys us is when someone deliberately tries to cheat us or hurt us, and then refuses to fix the problem when we ask politely. Pelthar seemed to relax slightly. So small problems are acceptable? Of course. We're all trying to make a living out here. Sometimes things go wrong. That's life. Deho smiled. Let's use the original contract terms. They were fair to both of us. After Pelthar left, looking much calmer, Hana joined Deho at the table with 2 cups of coffee. That's the 5th merchant this week who is terrified to negotiate with you, she said. I know. It's becoming a problem. A woman approached their table. She was human, in her 40s, with an academic look. Excuse me, are you trade negotiator Deho? Yes, and you are? Dr. Myung-hee. I'm a sociologist from Earth. I've been sent to study how the galaxy perceives humanity after recent events. May I sit? Please. Myung-hee sat down and pulled out a recording device. I've been interviewing various species over the past 2 weeks. The results are fascinating and somewhat concerning. The galaxy now sees humans as what they're calling sleeping giants. What does that mean? Hana asked. It means they think we're peaceful and patient most of the time, but incredibly dangerous when provoked, which is accurate, of course. But some species are now too afraid to do normal business with us. They're worried that any small mistake will trigger a military response. Deho sighed. That's not what we want at all. I know. But think about it from their perspective. 3 weeks ago, a single human ship disabled an entire fleet of 40 warships in less than 4 seconds, and you did it without destroying anything or killing anyone. That level of precision and power is terrifying. We gave them multiple warnings, Hana said. Yes, and that's actually what scares people most. You didn't respond with emotion. You didn't get angry or make threats. You just calmly explained what would happen, and then you did exactly what you said you would do. That cold efficiency is more frightening than rage. Myung-hee showed them some of her interview data. One Felician merchant had said, Humans are the only species I know who can destroy you while remaining polite. A draconian warrior had commented, We fight with honor and passion. Humans fight like they're solving a math problem. I respect them greatly and never want to face them in battle. Even a Zellarian economist had admitted, the humans dismantled our entire trade empire using nothing but our own laws. They understood our system better than we did. How do you defend against someone who defeats you with patience and paperwork? On the other side of the galaxy, in the Korthaxian Empire's capital, Trademaster Vrilth stood before the High Council. He had been promoted to High Admiral specifically because he had saved his species from disaster. The new human interaction protocols are now in effect across all our territories, he reported. Every Korthaxian officer has been trained in these guidelines. The head counselor nodded. Summarize the key points for the record. Vrilth pulled up a display. First, always assume human patience has limits even if those limits aren't visible. Second, never confuse human politeness with weakness. Third, never escalate against humans unless facing an existential threat. Fourth, if a human uses words like annoyed or irritated, immediately seek to resolve the problem. And what of War Master Krelvor? He has been stripped of rank and exiled to Colony 7. He serves as a reminder of what happens when pride overcomes wisdom. The counselor clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. The humans could have destroyed our fleet. They could have killed thousands of our people. Instead, they disabled our weapons and gave us chance after chance to surrender. Why? Because, Vrilth said, humans actually mean it when they say they prefer peace. They're not weak. They're not afraid. They simply understand that war is expensive and diplomacy is cheaper. They'll always try the cheap option first. But when diplomacy fails, then they use the expensive option, and they're very good at it. Meanwhile, on Earth, Admiral Sungmin was giving a lecture to new diplomatic and military officers. A young lieutenant named Bora raised her hand. Sir, I don't understand something. At Trading Post 7, we could have disabled the Corthaxian fleet without any warning. We could have solved the problem in 4 seconds instead of giving them hours to comply. Why didn't we? Sungmin smiled. Good question, Lieutenant. Let me explain with a story from Earth's history. There was a time when we had weapons that could destroy entire cities. We used them twice. They ended a war, but they created problems that lasted for generations. We learned something important. Using maximum force immediately might solve the immediate problem, but it creates future problems. He pulled up a display showing the 7 annoyance protocol levels. These protocols force us to give other species multiple chances to choose peace. Level 1 is just a clear statement that there's a problem. Level 2 is a demonstration that we have the ability to solve the problem by force if necessary. Most conflicts end by Level 2 because intelligent species realize that continuing is stupid. But what about species that don't realize it? Bora asked. Then we escalate through the remaining levels. Each level is designed to give them one more chance to surrender before things get worse. By the time we reach Level 7, they've had so many opportunities to stop that no one in the galaxy can say we didn't try every peaceful option. So the protocols are about politics, about how other species see us, partly. But they're also about protecting ourselves. Earth spent thousands of years fighting itself. We know what endless conflict looks like. We know how cycles of revenge work. The protocols help us avoid those cycles by making sure every action we take is measured and proportional. Another officer spoke up. But sir, doesn't this mean aggressive species can test us? Can push us and see how far they can go before we respond? Yes, and some will try. But here's the thing. Once we respond completely. We don't do half measures. We don't leave threats partially dealt with. When we say a problem is solved, it stays solved. The Krethic Swarm learned this. The Zalarian Consortium learned this. And now the Corthaxians learned this. Eventually, everyone learns. Back at Trading Post 7, Vrilth had requested a private meeting with Deho. They sat in a quiet conference room without guards or witnesses. Vrilth performed a formal Corthaxian apology ritual that took 10 minutes. Deho accepted it gracefully. I must ask you something, Vrilth said. Would you really have gone to Level 7? Would you have dismantled our entire empire over stolen cargo? Deho thought for a moment before answering. The cargo stopped being important after the first hour. What mattered was the principle. If we let one species attack us without consequences, others would try. We'd face more and more provocations until a real war became inevitable. So you would have destroyed us to prevent future conflicts? Not destroyed, dismantled, there's a difference. We would have removed your ability to threaten others for a generation. We would have placed your empire under supervision until you learned to coexist peacefully. We would have rebuilt your infrastructure afterward. But your age of expansion through aggression would have been over. Vrilth clicked his mandibles slowly. That's somehow more frightening than simple destruction. Because it's permanent, Deho explained. Destroying something creates martyrs and desires for revenge. Dismantling something and rebuilding it better removes the foundation that allowed the problem to exist in the first place. Your species thinks very long-term. We have to. Earth's history taught us that short-term solutions often create long-term problems. So now we try to solve problems in ways that stay solved. Vrilth stood to leave, then paused. May I ask one more question? Task Force Vengeance arrived at New Kyoto after 19 days of maximum burn. The fleet was exhausted. Their ships were stressed to breaking point. But they arrived in time. Barely. On the surface, Captain Jamin and his militia had been pushed back to their final defensive positions in Hanseong. They were out of ammunition. They were out of food. They were not out of courage, but courage could not stop Craver soldiers forever. He was preparing for a final stand when the word came. The fleet had arrived. 3 million people looked to the sky and saw the flash of ships emerging from faster-than-light travel. For 19 days they had held on with nothing but hope. Now hope had arrived with 230 warships. Admiral Dae-hyun did not waste time on speeches. Task Force Vengeance dropped from FTL in combat formation. Weapons were already hot. Targeting solutions were already calculated. He broadcast on all Cravor frequencies. "This is Admiral Dae-hyun of the Terran Defense Fleet. You attacked our world. You murdered our citizens. You made an enemy of Earth. Today you learn what that means. No quarter, no mercy. No survivors." The human fleet attacked with precision that overwhelmed the Cravor completely. The first salvo alone destroyed 300 enemy vessels. Nuclear-tipped missiles created electromagnetic pulses that disabled Cravor biosensors. Kinetic kill vehicles punched through formation after formation at impossible speeds. Captain Hyejin, promoted after Velcros 4, commanded the destroyer Retribution. She led her squadron through the center of the Cravor fleet. Her tactical display showed hundreds of enemy contacts. She felt no fear, only cold calculation. Each enemy destroyed meant one less threat to the people below. Her squadron eliminated 93 Cravor ships in the first hour. They established complete space superiority over Hanseong. The way was clear for the Marines. General Bora coordinated the ground assault. 50,000 Marines deployed across 3 continents in the largest orbital drop in human history. Drop pods rained from the sky like meteorites. Each one contained a squad of Marines in full combat armor. Marine Lieutenant Dongwoo landed near Hanseong with his platoon. He was born on Mars and had never seen Earth, but he fought for it nonetheless. His platoon linked up with Captain Jamin's exhausted militia forces. Together, they began pushing the Cravor back. The Cravor ground forces had already been demoralized by their fleet's destruction. Now they faced fresh human troops with unlimited ammunition and air support. Many tried to surrender. The humans did not accept surrenders. They remembered the 40,000 dead civilians. They remembered the enslaved populations on other worlds. This was not a rescue operation. This was extermination. Within 72 hours, New Kyoto was liberated. Every Cravor soldier on the surface was dead. Every Cravor ship in orbit was destroyed or fleeing. Human casualties in the liberation numbered 3,217 dead and 8,000 wounded. It was a high price, but they had saved 3 million people. Governor Myung-hee met Admiral Dae-hyun in the ruins of Hanseong's government complex. The city was scarred. Buildings were destroyed. The dead numbered in tens of thousands, but New Kyoto had survived. She tried to thank him. Dae-hyun shook his head. He looked tired, older than his years. "Save your thanks," he said. "We are not done yet." President Han's orders were explicit. Total war meant total victory. The Cravor swarm must be eliminated permanently. They could not be allowed to rebuild and attack again. Task Force Vengeance became Task Force Hunter. They tracked the fleeing Cravor across 3 star systems. They destroyed any vessel that could not escape. Intelligence teams interrogated captured data cores. They mapped the swarm's territory and fleet positions. What they discovered was sobering. The Cravor swarm was much larger than anyone realized. The forces at New Kyoto had been only a small fraction of their strength. The swarm controlled 17 star systems and commanded over 30,000 vessels. Earth mobilized even further. More fleets were commissioned. Alliances were formed with species the Cravor had enslaved. The hunt became a crusade. For 2 years, humanity waged the most brutal military campaign in its history. System by system, world by world, they dismantled the Cravor swarm. They used tactics that shocked even themselves. Scorched earth policies, targeted bioweapons, relativistic bombardment of Cravor breeding worlds. The galaxy watched in horror and awe. This was humanity without restraint. This was what happened when you threatened human children. This was the fury of a death world species protecting its own. The war ended at Cravor Prime, the heart of the swarm. 3 human battle fleets converged on the system. Over 400 ships carrying the combined fury of Earth. The Cravor made their final stand with 12,000 vessels defending their homeworld. The battle lasted 16 days. Space became a graveyard. Human casualties exceeded 100,000. But humanity prevailed. Admiral Dae-hyun watched from his flagship as the last Cravor fortress ship broke apart under sustained fire. He felt no triumph, only exhaustion and the weight of the dead. General Bora led the final ground assault on the spawning complex. The Marines showed no mercy to the Cravor queens. The genetic templates that allowed the swarm to adapt and regrow were destroyed completely. The Cravor swarm, a species that terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries, ceased to exist. Scattered remnants fled into deep space. Human patrol fleets would hunt them for decades, but the swarm as a unified threat was gone. The war had cost humanity 173,000 military deaths. Civilian deaths, primarily from New Kyoto, numbered 47,000. Every human knew someone who died, but the war liberated 23 enslaved species. It eliminated a predator that had claimed billions of lives. The freed species, led by the Velkrin, petitioned to join a new alliance. They called it the Terran Protectorate. The Galactic Council, which had sat idle during New Kyoto's darkest hour, faced a crisis. 7 species withdrew membership and joined the Protectorate. 12 more opened diplomatic channels with Earth. The Council's authority crumbled. Ambassador Soyan addressed the Reformed Council one final time. "You feared our violence. You called us monsters. Perhaps you were right. But we are monsters who fight for the innocent. We ended the Krav War when you would not. Earth offers every species a choice. Join us in defending civilization, or continue your debates while others bleed. But understand this. We will never again ask permission to do what is right." The age of the Galactic Council as supreme authority ended. The age of human influence began. Admiral Dae-hyun retired after the war. He returned to Busan and spent his remaining years teaching at the Naval Academy. He never spoke publicly about the war. The memories were too heavy. Captain Hee-jin, promoted to admiral, took command of the Protectorate Defense Force. She built a truly multi-species military that could defend all member worlds. General Bo-Ra became the first human Secretary General of the Terran Protectorate. Her experience in both combat and peacekeeping made her the perfect leader. Governor Myung-hee rebuilt New Kyoto over 2 decades. The colony became a symbol of human resilience. The memorial park in Hanseong listed every name of the 47,000 dead. They would never be forgotten. 50 years later, the galaxy was changed. The Terran Protectorate included 38 species spanning 207 star systems. It operated on principles foreign to the old council: mutual defense, shared resources, and most importantly, the willingness to use force against predators and oppressors. Some council species adapted and reformed their militaries. Others retreated into isolation. A few tried to challenge human dominance. Those challenges ended quickly and decisively. The galaxy learned a lesson. Earth was a death world. Its children walked among the stars as protectors of those who could not protect themselves. The signal that the Velkrin broadcast in desperation had doomed the Krav War swarm and changed everything. On a monument at Earth's United Nations complex, a plaque bore an inscription in 47 languages. To those who cried out in darkness, know that humanity heard. To those who turned away, know that we remember. To those who stand with us now, know that Terra protects her own. And to those who would prey upon the innocent, know that the Deathworlders are watching always the end.